Here's Chris Johnston with late breaking news.
Yes, Daren, not the full details at this point, but it does sound as though Thomas Tatar is headed to the Vegas Golden Knights. That's one of the trades we do think got in under the wire at 3 p.m.
Just a couple other things. It looks like Josh Juris is going from Carolina to Pittsburgh, and Calgary was looking at Nick Shore, I believe, but I'm just trying to figure out if it got done in time.
The other thing is the Columbus Blue Jackets have announced, amongst other things, is that Jack Johnson is not being traded. They were unable to get a deal done for the defenseman, so he'll stay until the end of the season when he becomes an unrestricted free agent.
And it sounds to me like the Rangers have something coming as well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, Elliotte, just you said Calgary may have something going?
I heard they were talking Nick Shore. I just don't have confirmation it got slid in under 3 o'clock.
And Josh Juris goes
Juris to Pittsburgh.
Okay. And Thomas Tatar, a couple of wingers with the Detroit Red Wings. Gustav Nyquist was also rumored to be being shopped around. So Thomas Tatar gives Vegas even more speed and more depth. But a couple of names that we haven't heard from yet, Max Pacioretty, Erik Karlsson, Ryan McDonagh, although Nick believes that the Rangers do have something going. Regarding, don't know whether it's Ryan McDonagh, could be the likes of Matt Zuccarello. But you're right. From the expectations, the lead up to this thing, there was a lot of players available. Yeah. And it never really got to the point where the buyers and sellers, one of them was going to bend.
Well, you're getting to that point where there's only a couple teams jockeying for a spot maybe in the East, really, and the realistic part of it is some teams realize they're not there, so they're not going to go and expend that first-round draft pick or those prospects, and they're going to stay true to what everyone's telling, that it's a copycat league, and they're believing that building through the draft is the way to do this thing. So teams don't want to give up those prospects and draft choices. Yep. So, you know, the only other contest now are the teams that are trying to fight for the Stanley Cup amongst each other and not want a team to get a player. You want to get that player, prevent the other team from getting that player. So that jockeying is going on. So some teams have added in that regard, but all in all, it really did hit the brakes. I'm very surprised.
Almost what we saw last year with Shattenkirk, with everybody vying for him, trying to almost to keep him away from the other teams. It didn't work out for Washington.
And where's Tampa in all of this? No team that was supposed to contend for a Stanley Cup this season needed a defenseman more than them in the 3-4.
Elliotte?
I would just warn you, Nick, I understand there's stuff in the queue.
Yeah.
So
I'm not writing them off.
Oh, okay,
I'm saying, where are they in all of this?
Okay.
We hear the Rangers might have an announcement soon. Is it McDonagh possibly going to Tampa Bay? That's the one that I think that, personally, I think Tampa Bay's been too quiet right now. And like I said, they were the team that was desperate to add some depth on the blue line.
Out of Tampa Bay, if they get the thing.
And I did the game in Montreal the other night. They had a ton of issues with their back end, tons of turnovers, lots of end zone play. And that's the one thing Tampa has a habit of doing, is spending too much time in their end. They're electric when they're moving into the opposing end. They score a ton of goals. They're a fun team to watch, and they've got all the pieces there. But they do spend extended periods of time in their end, longer than they should, and a lot of it has to do with these turnovers and not exiting. So McDonagh is the right piece to put in there. He's a guy that can settle things down. He can exit your zone. Big, strong guy.
Elliotte?
Yeah, I think it's in the queue on the trade call.
McDonagh.
But McDonagh to Tampa Bay.
So learn this week. You want to be sure on those trade calls.
Yes, you do.
Oh, you're talking the Broussard and
yes.
the Vegas. Yeah, that was a bizarre one though, guys. It was so strange.
I just got
confirmation.
I just got confirmation from somebody inside the Ranger organization. It's done.
McDonagh to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yes, sir.
Done?
Yes, sir.
Also, Erik Karlsson, as McDonagh does move, and we wonder why their charter would leave, but Erik Karlsson doesn't. The report is that he's staying put.
And that was always a possibility, that if it wasn't done now, it would be done at the draft or in the summer. And I think that's something that the Ottawa Senators have said right from the beginning, that they're not going to rush this thing. They're not going to take less than what they think is the value. So if there are people that believe the value drops significantly moving forward, then time will tell if that's true. But there is that other part of it, that there is more suitors that will come at the draft and more players that may be available that a team might be willing to give up at that point than right before the playoff run. So there is some, positive parts to waiting as well.
Sounding like the Ranger deal might be a little bigger than what we've seen now, that there might be some multiple people or pieces involved.
Most important piece, though, McDonagh going to Tampa, they got their man. And that's the one guy, as you said, Gary, that when you look at that Tampa Bay Lightning team, that is the one weakness they have. And they have so much offense up front. They're so organized that way, and they can come at you in waves. But when they do get hemmed in, it's where you can capitalize on them. In a long playoff series, a guy like McDonagh, the way he plays that shutdown defense and stingy physical type of hockey, I mean, this is the perfect guy to step in there. Him and Hedman, the same defense core, I mean, that's a lot to go up against on that left-hand side.
And I wonder what this did in terms of this deal going right to the last minute. What did that do for Green in Detroit? Now I'm starting to hear that he might be staying in Detroit, that there is no deal for Mike Green moving forward here.
Because McDonagh had to happen first. There wasn't enough time left.
Darren,
Or they couldn't get a
I have
deal.
no idea, but I would think that if you connected the dots, that perhaps there wasn't enough time for someone to go and get Green after bidding for McDonagh.
It's a right-hand shot that they really needed, but McDonagh can play the right side, but it's not the right-hand shots. But at the same time, you know, I think if I had to pick one player to go into this battle with, I think McDonagh would be the guy I would take.
It sounds like there's a lot of pieces, and it could be a really significant deal as we wait for everything to filter through. But McDonagh's impact on where he would slot in with that Tampa Bay defense is a curious one when you look at Hedman and Strawman and Sergachev. Sergachev's top four, with the way he plays. Girardi, who they know.
Great options. You know, that's the best thing for John Cooper is you can, like you said, if he wants to, he could put McDonough over on the right-hand side. He can play him on the left side and have a real strong 1-2 punch with Hedman. There's so many different variables there depending on who's going back the other way, but it gives them certainly great top two defensemen in Hedman and McDonough.
And Nemesnikov's name has come up as we approach the deadline. Is he being thrown into this mix, and does Zuccarello possibly join this deal and go the other way? If it's getting bigger and better, maybe they're willing to give up a guy like that, and New York is looking at building off a guy like that and moving an older guy on. Like Nick says, as it grows in size, if it does grow to that thing, I mean, that would be a heck of a deal, and maybe the deal of the day for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Vladimir Nemesnikov was on that top line with Steven Stamkos and Kucherov, and they went into a bit of a slump. And Tampa Bay Lightning haven't played nearly as well as they did at the start of the year, which was on
Tyler Johnson's
salary
another
cap
name too that's been thrown around with the emergence of Braden Point, how he's playing now in that second-line center role. We'll call him the first-line center if you want, but there's another guy that potentially could be moved as well in the deal.
Back over the newsbreakers, Elliotte, Chris, and John.
Yeah, Calgary and Ottawa did a deal together. Last year, at the deadline, they did Curtis Lazar. This year, they do Nick Shore from Ottawa to Calgary. And Nick, I just want to add to what you said. I think this McDonagh deal is something pretty big.
Yeah.
And the return guys on Tatar is a first, a second, and a third-round pick going from Vegas back to Detroit. So that's a big return, but Tatar is not a rental. So that's a player they're going to control.
Just to back up at what everybody says, I just got a confirmation of somebody inside the Ranger organization to suggest it's a massive, massive deal with Tampa.
Yep.
So why would Tampa make a massive deal?
Because just what you just said, this was a team that had 9 losses through the first 43 games of the season, and now all of a sudden they're 10-8 in their last 18. Things have been sliding a little bit. They've been struggling on the back end. I just think that they just don't see it trending in the direction that it was flowing in. And do you sit tight and say everything will be okay, or do you make an aggressive strike? And I think Steve Yzerman, if this is the deal that I'm thinking it is, I think this is a very aggressive strike in saying that we want to win right now, and we're not going to wait for these guys to show up. Tyler Johnston, and it's a great point that you just made, he had 1 goal in 17 games. He finally scored the other night versus Ottawa, and he had been on. And the reason why they haven't been winning is because Kucherov and Johnston had quieted, and they just hadn't scored in a long time. 11 for Kucherov, 17 for Johnston. So I think Steve Yzerman is saying he doesn't like the trend, and he's going to change it. And it's going to be fun to see what this ends up.
Yeah.
You think it would be a Zuccarello, like would qualify for that massive deal?
You've got to move some players off your roster, which Yzerman said he did not want to do, which is which I didn't think he would do. But then when you look at what's coming in the other way, maybe you're making your team better, and maybe you're getting some more grit and determination for playoff runs. You're not going to beat teams by just scoring 5-6 goals a game to beat them in the playoffs. You're going to have to grit some out, and he's looking for maybe a little more sandpaper in that lineup. And the play of Gord and Point have convinced him that maybe some of the other pieces can move.
Oh, Patrick.
John?
Patrick Maroon has gone to New Jersey from the Edmonton Oilers.
Patrick Maroon to New Jersey. So New Jersey picks up Michael Grabner before the deadline and Patrick Maroon today, so it gives them, and he's Taylor Hall, so there would be a connection there. But Maroon and Michael Grabner give the New Jersey Devils some speed and also some size. And the good thing about Maroon is he can play with good players, like fast players. He's got some skill set there. For some reason, it fell off a little bit this year with Connor McDavid. But New Jersey's kind of like the sleeper in this whole deadline and this season.
Just the play of Taylor Hall is the one that makes this even better. I mean, we all knew Taylor Hall was a real solid player in the National Hockey League, but he's gone there and he's made this his sole purpose is to stick this you-know-where to the Edmonton Oilers. And this is what's driving him. And it's what drives the Vegas Golden Knights. All these guys are castaways. The team said, we don't need you, we don't want you. And this, look at the way they're playing. They have something to prove. They got a chip on their shoulder. Taylor Hall has got this huge chip on his shoulder, and good on him to answer the bell like this. And what the New Jersey Devils are saying is, we've got the goalie, we got to add some pieces. And in a playoff run, you never know what can happen, and they've added a couple of real nice pieces.
A little bit of size as well up front, Brian Boyle and Patrick Maroon. John.
Yeah, I don't know if there's been such a flurry around 3 o'clock and everything else that's been talked about with McDonagh happening, but Erik Karlsson is not leaving Ottawa. That is confirmed. And so that is going to be another hurdle for Pierre Dorion at the draft in Dallas and as of July 1st when they can actually start discussing a contract with number 65.
And down the highway there, the captain of the Montreal Canadiens, Max Pacioretty, also staying put beyond this deadline, guys.
Kyrie, the Tampa Bay Lightning, whenever Erik Karlsson was brought up as a potential trade to the Tampa Bay Lightning, Sergachev's name kept resurfacing a little bit. You think if McDonagh would qualify in that type of swap, that Sergachev would ever go the other way?
You know what, Daren? The one constant thing that we always heard was that Steve Yzerman didn't want to disrupt his roster, right? I'm like,
Sneaky
how
Pete.
massive is this thing now, and how much did he just
This
say?
can't be massive unless he touches his roster. This is not about prospects and young players. If this is massive, it touches his team.
That's
and
right.
if it touches his team, then you know that he didn't like what he was seeing. And Steve Yzerman is not a person to mess with it.
Yeah.
But Sergachev would be a player that if I was the Rangers, I'd want back. Young defenseman. You know what? Absolutely. Upside. If you're going to give up to McDonagh, you want to replenish that cupboard. You want a prospect or a player coming back. They want to get younger. They want to get faster. Sergachev fits that bill.
Who knows what's happening in the last 24, 48 hours, the names exchanged. But I can tell you that Stevie Yzerman had a list of untouchables. And at one point, he was certainly on it with Gord and Braden Point. And the thought was that you can't have these guys. Now, is there one of them involved in this deal? We'll find out hopefully momentarily, but certainly that when you talk about those type of numbers now, you got it to Gary's point. Someone's moving that we didn't really think would have.
Ryan McDonagh's the captain, the defenseman. He moves. Erik Karlsson does not, and neither does Max Pacioretty. And you've been on this almost from
listen,
day one on Pacioretty.
there's no one more disappointed right now than Max Pacioretty. He knows he needs a fresh change. He wanted to go and just score goals and not be the captain or the go-to guy or the spokesperson. And he's going to have to wait. He's going to have to finish out this season, and he's going to have to play well. I'm telling you right now, that there was a heavy price on him right from the beginning. Bergevin hasn't wavered. And there's also a factor here as well, and that is Pacioretty has not played well. He has not shown enough energy. He has not shown enough to prove that teams were willing to give Bergevin what the ask was. It didn't match up, and I think that's the main reason why he is still a Montreal Canadian.
How you set the table for somebody is so important in the game. Remember you guys used to joke around about that, a table for one, table for two. His table for two left to Dallas with Radulov. Max Pacioretty isn't the guy who stick handles through and scores. He needs a guy like Radulov. He's missed him.
More Montreal news at the newsbreaker desk.
Joe Morrow, the defenseman, has been traded to Winnipeg for a 4th-round pick, Daren. So that's the smaller stuff getting done and a little more depth for a Winnipeg Jets team that figures they're going to go deep into the playoffs, and also helps you when you don't know what time and what date Jacob Trouba is coming back.
Or with Tobias Enstrom getting hit with that shot from Josh Morrissey today. Although Winnipeg said he's okay. He's probably just more upset than anything when he went off the ice. Just the way the guys were helping him off the ice was the odd one.
But to finish on Max, like now at the end of the day, and I agree with Nick, I think he's looking for a change of scenery. I think he was expecting it the other night versus Tampa. I thought he had a real solid game for a guy. If the trade deadline was bothering him, it certainly didn't look like it. He was skating as well as I've seen him. But again, he's a guy who sits in place, gets pucks, and finishes them off. And that's what he's done. And I don't think he's had that this year. And I think a lot of teams out there figure if they can put him in a different situation, that this guy is going to get back to scoring 30-plus goals again. And they could be right.
And he's a proven finisher when he does have that. He's a 4-time consecutive 30-goal scorer. So, I mean, the price is high for Max Pacioretty, and rightfully so. If I'm Mark Bergevin, I want to get absolute maximum return on him. And if it wasn't coming his way, I wouldn't have made the deal either. He's got a great contract point. This is a guy that will fit into somebody else's lineup easily, and we'll see if it gets done in the summer.
And Drouin struggled. So that deal that was done for Drouin, for Sergachev, a lot of people in Montreal didn't like that deal. They see Sergachev in Tampa Bay. He's having this whale of a year. He got off to a rock star start, and then you got Drouin struggling. So for Mark Bergevin, he's going to get what he wants for this player. He's not going to do a deal if it doesn't.